With the second lockdown and various other restrictions now in place throughout the UK, it's apparent that we're all going to face various different challenges in relation to maintaining good mental health and morale over the winter. And so I think it's really important that all of us start to think about how can we proactively take steps to ensure that we're able to deal with the inevitable challenges, frustrations, and hurdles that we're all going to have to overcome. And I think more than anything, right now is a time in which all of us need to develop and exercise resilience. And so today's video marks the first in a new series, Lessons in Resilience. And we're starting with one of the most resilient people that has perhaps ever graced this planet, Terry Fox, and how he embodies one face of resilience like no one else. The idea of post-traumatic growth. The term post-traumatic growth refers to the process of positive psychological change that is experienced when we face trauma or adversity. So in other words, people are able to thrive and grow as a result of the various bad things that have happened to them. And Terry Fox was no stranger to trauma, and for many, he's considered the greatest Canadian to have ever lived. He grew up as an ordinary teenager in the 1970s with a passion for sports and the goal of becoming a PE teacher. But at the age of 18, he was diagnosed with cancer in his right leg. And due to the severity of his condition, doctors had to make the drastic decision of amputating his right leg just above the knee. For anyone, this is an immensely traumatic experience, let alone an 18-year-old who lived and breathed sports. Alongside amputation, Fox also underwent 16 months of chemotherapy. And despite being 18, was actually placed in a children's ward. And there he saw children of all ages undergo the same pain and trauma that he had experienced from cancer. And he saw some children having to have amputations like him, but then others unfortunately passing away. And it was spending time with these children during his treatment that Terry really began to change his perspective of what it meant to be a cancer patient. You see, the 1970s was a period in which cancer was a very hush-hush subject. It was very taboo. People didn't like to talk about it, and there wasn't much awareness about this illness. And because of this, fundraising efforts were being stifled year after year. But Terry Fox decided that he would change this. He began plotting out an audacious mission, one that would raise awareness of this terrible condition, but also raise invaluable funds for its research. He decided that as a teenage amputee, he would run across the entirety of Canada by running 26.2 miles, a full marathon, every single day until he made it from the easternmost to westernmost points of the country. And he would call it the Marathon of Hope. So after 14 months of training, Fox set off on this journey on April 12, 1980, by dipping his right leg in the Atlantic Ocean near St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. His run began with the aim of raising $1 million from Canadians as he passed through the country. Although because of his prosthetic limb not being developed for intense physical exertion, it meant that his run became more of a hop and a skip, one that would give him immense pain with every step. Nonetheless, this did not faze Terry, nor did the fact that in the early days he faced vicious rain, blustery winds and snowstorms. Those early days were also lonely. He would wake up every day at 4 a.m. to run along empty highways as his campaign had yet spread through word of mouth. But he kept going because he wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it for the countless other cancer survivors and particularly the children that he had been on the treatment wards with. And this is a key component of post-traumatic growth, that people are able to overcome and develop from their adversities by being service-oriented. Having the opportunity to use one's trauma as a fuel to help prevent or lessen the chance of others going through the same experience is one that enables people to thrive after personal tragedy. And Terry Fox fully embodied this. This desire to serve others kept him going. And after the initial slump, he was rejuvenated when residents from a small town of 10,000 people gave him $10,000 as he passed through. And soon enough, after plenty more lonesome days, Terry's campaign began to spread. More people flooded to the streets that he was passing to spur him on and donate. He made guest appearances at major sporting events, thousands of companies signed up to donate money for every mile he ran, and over 10,000 people greeted him with his own personal parade as he reached Toronto. The explosion in support led Fox to stretch his initial goal and set his heights on raising not just $1 million, but $24 million. $1 for every Canadian citizen. And this audacious ambition again characterises a key component of post-traumatic growth, the idea of being open to new possibilities. Someone who grows from trauma begins to learn that their potential is far beyond what they initially believed. As they progress and grow, this paves the way for a compounding process of exponential growth. But as Fox was well into his second million of fundraising, he unfortunately began to fade. In late August, he had less and less energy to run, needing frequent breaks, and began to have difficulty breathing. And on the 1st of September, the pain was too much, and he had to stop outside Thunder Bay. After receiving a number of tests at hospital, his worst fears were realised. His cancer had returned and spread. He now had 2 large tumours in his lungs, which astounded doctors, given his unbelievable acts of athleticism over the previous months. And the next day, Fox held a tearful press conference during which he announced that his cancer had returned. He was forced to end his run after 143 days and 5,373 kilometres ran. But a week after his run ended, a national telethon was held to raise money for his cause, with $10.5 million being raised in just 5 hours. Fox continued to face treatment in the subsequent months, but after a long and heroic battle, he passed away on the 28th of June 1981, just a month shy of his 23rd birthday. But his legacy remains 40 years on, with the annual Terry Fox Run ran every year around the world and all across Canada. And to date, it has raised over $800 million for cancer charities. For Canadians, Terry Fox was the personification of resilience. He was a young man who had been dealt the cruelest of hands in life. Yet he had the mindset, the willpower, and the ambition to make good of this traumatic situation. And he chose to do something that seemed impossible for people with 2 legs, let alone 1. The experiences he went through were ones he came to be fond of. By his own admission, he believed himself to have been a selfish individual for the first 18 years of his life. And he managed to end up feeling grateful for what had happened to him because it gave him a greater appreciation of life, something he felt he wouldn't have developed otherwise. And this is a key final feature of post-traumatic growth, that those negative experiences that we go through have their biggest value in changing our perspective. They open our eyes to what is really important, the people, the causes, and the things that we should really spend our time on. These experiences can and often will help us reframe our entire existence so that we no longer take our lives for granted. Because when it comes down to it, it's exceptionally rare to see anyone do anything extraordinary without first going through some pain or trauma. Of course, we shouldn't relish and invite traumatic experiences into our lives, but we should all be prepared for when they do happen, and to keep at the back of our mind that in a lot of cases, these can weirdly be the best things that ever happened to us. And Terry Fox himself went so far to say that he would have been even tougher if he had had both legs amputated. It was this mentality that has made Terry Fox an icon of resilience. He showed all Canadians that post-traumatic growth is possible even in the most devastating of circumstances. His ability to use his struggles as a fuel for personal and societal change is a lesson in resilience that each and every single one of us can learn.